Lesson number 10 for Sunday, March 5th. The Rich Fool. Luke 12:16-21 says, And he gave an illustration. A rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. In fact, his barns were full to overflowing. So he said, I know, I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. Then I'll have room enough to store everything. And I'll sit back and say to myself, my friend, you have enough stored away for years to come. Now take it easy, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, You fool, you will die this very night. Then who will get it all? Yes, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth but not have a rich relationship with God. What's the relevant message to us here? What strong rebuke did the Lord give to the foolish man, and what should that say to us regarding our attitude toward what we own? Though the message is broader than this, one could argue that this was a story Jesus told about what not to do in retirement. Accordingly, if a person is quitting work to spend his accumulated assets on himself, he should be aware and take the story to heart. The problem is not working hard or getting wealth, particularly as one gets older and perhaps even richer. The problem is the attitude toward it. Jesus' words, take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry, Luke 12:19, express the real issue here. From Christ Object Lessons, page 257 and 258, it says, This man's aims were no higher than those of the beasts that perish. He lived as if there were no God, no heaven, no future life, as if everything he possessed were his own, and he owed nothing to God or man. If we think only of ourselves and ignore the needs of others and the cause of God during this stage of life, we are following the example of the rich fool. There was no indication in Jesus' parable that the rich man was lazy or dishonest. The problem was in how he spent what God had entrusted to him. Because we don't know the day of our death, we should always be ready for it by living to carry out God's will instead of pursuing a life of selfishness. The general picture given in the Bible is that a person works and remains productive as long as he or she is able. In fact, it is interesting to note that the authors of the great prophetic book of Daniel and the Revelation were, many believe, both in their 80s when they completed their work. This was at a time when the average age at death was about 50 years. Ellen G. White published some of her best-known and best-loved books, such as The Desire of Ages, after about age 70. Age, then, as long as we are healthy, should not mean that we stop being productive and, to whatever extent possible, doing some good. Jesus counseled those waiting for his second coming not just to watch, but to continue working as well. Matthew 24:44-46. At any age and with any amount of money, how can we avoid falling into the trap that the man did here? Ask yourself, what am I living for? From the book Christ Object Lessons, page 257 and 258, it says, The foolish rich man's aims were no higher than those of the beasts that perished. He lived as if there was no God, no heaven, no future life, as if everything he possessed were his own, and he owed nothing to God or man. The psalmist described this rich man when he wrote in Psalm 14:1, "The fool hath said in his heart, there is no God." This man has lived and planned for self. He sees that the future is abundantly provided for. There is nothing for him now but to treasure and enjoy the fruits of his labors. He regards himself as favored above other men and takes credit to himself for his wise management. 1 Corinthians 3:19 says, "But the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God." While the rich man is looking forward to years of enjoyment, the Lord is making far different plans. The only thing that would be of value to him now he has not secured. In living for self, he has rejected that divine love which would have flowed out in mercy to his fellow men. Thus he has rejected life. For God is love, and love is life. This man has chosen the earthly rather than the spiritual, and with the earthly he must pass away. From Review and Herald, June 26, 1894, entitled Parable of the Rich Man, it says, "If men would do their duty as faithful stewards of their Lord's goods, there would be no cry for bread, none suffering in destitution, none naked and in want. It is unfaithfulness of men that brings about the state of suffering in which humanity is plunged. If those whom God has made stewards would but appropriate their Lord's goods to the object for which he gave to them, this state of suffering would not exist. The Lord tests men by giving them an abundance of good things, just as he tested the rich man of the parable. If we prove ourselves unfaithful in the righteous mammon, who shall entrust us the true riches? It will be those who have stood the test on the earth, who have been found faithful, who have obeyed the words of the Lord in being merciful, in using their means for the advancement of his kingdom, that will hear from the lips of the Master, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things." Have a blessed day.